Okay, so in this video, we're going to be talking about water. So water is pretty common in everybody's life. We drink water every day. We use water to do a bunch of different things. But why is water important specifically? Well, there are many aspects that we can talk about, but essentially there are two very important attributes of water. So the first one is that water is a universal solvent, and we can look at this from a biological perspective. As a solvent, as a universal solvent, it kind of dissolves a lot of substances, and it helps our blood transport some important nutrition to our bodies. Well, that's really important to us because that's essentially how we live and how we continue doing a lot of activities that we're doing in our daily lives. And the second attribute is liquid water has this special characteristic, right? And this is related to the formation of life. When scientists they're trying to find lives on other planets, they're one of the factors that determines whether life is possible on other planets is whether liquid water is present on that planet, right? And the reason behind this is really because liquid water, its density is very interesting. In a liquid phase, it actually has a higher density than ice, which is its solid phase. And this is totally opposite for many other material that we know, right? But this characteristic actually keeps lives possible on the Earth. Because if you look at this picture, this background over here, you see this layer of ice on top of the liquid water. And what it does essentially is it protects the water, it prevents the water from getting exposed to the cold air. And what it does is that it keeps these liquid water, liquid. It stops it from converting to ice anymore. And because of this, we can find like fish and other organisms that live in water if we want. But if all of these, if like this layer does not float, which means if this layer has a higher density than the liquid water, let's say, it will basically like just sink. And now the liquid water is exposed to the cold air and it will eventually convert to ice as well. And as we all know, organisms we generally cannot live in ice. So that's why it's very important for the formation of life in the earliest stage of the Earth. Okay, and then how is water cycled? Water it's not just staying here. We have noticed in our daily lives that water is constantly moving. But remember that the Earth is a closed environment. It is a closed environment for many different things. And for water, like we do not get water from the universe. All the water that we have in our lives and everywhere on the Earth was here already in the at the very beginning of the Earth. So, how is it cycled? How does water move inside of inside of the Earth, which is a closed system? Well, we have different terminologies here, but these are not as scary as they look. So we're first going to talk about this term called evapotranspiration. Okay, it actually has two different parts. The first part is evaporation. So evaporation is fairly easy to understand because it's just talking about this river or this lake, and the liquid water is essentially going to escape from its liquid phase to its gaseous phase. And what it does is that it basically just becomes steam naturally, and this is a natural process. And that's evaporation. That's all it's talking about. And the second part is transpiration. So what does transpiration mean? Well, transpiration is specifically talking about plants. When plants take up water from their roots and they're basically like transporting the water up and eventually releasing the water into the air, it's called transpiration. So those two words kind of are combined into this one word called evapotranspiration. Okay, and the second term is called condensation. Well, condensation, remember now we have water in the air, basically like steam, like water in the air. And those water basically get collected by themselves and they form clouds. And that whole process is called condensation. Okay, and precipitation. So now we have clouds, and these clouds, as it's getting bigger and bigger, it's going to rain. It's going to rain and it's going to snow. If the air temperature is cold enough, it's going to snow. If it's not cold enough, it's going to rain. And those, like snowing and raining, those two combined is called precipitation in general. Okay, and next we have runoff. So what is runoff? Runoff is basically if we have rain on our ground, and the water basically are going to flow. They're going to flow into rivers, they're going to flow into lakes, and that's called runoff. If the water is moving from our ground to the large accumulations of water, which are like lakes and ponds and rivers, that's called runoff. And infiltration. So what is infiltration? Well, it's talking about the same group of water. If we have water on our ground and it does not flow into rivers, but instead it will go down, it will kind of like infiltrate through the soil and it will go down to form like groundwater. Well, that whole process is called infiltration. Okay, so that's about it. That's about the water cycle. And we're going to talk about some problems regarding water. So the first one we're going to talk about is pretty familiar, I guess, to a lot of people, is the water scarcity problem. Well, uh, why is that? Because it's first confusing to me because 70% of the Earth's surface is water, and the volume remains constant. Remember, we talked about the Earth as a closed system. Like water does not escape from the Earth, nor do we gain any water from the universe. But like 70% of the Earth is water. How is there a water shortage? Well, it's because 97.5% of the seawater is unfit for human to consume. If we drink a lot of them, we're gonna die. Like it does not support our body system. So those are not drinkable, those are not usable, and that causes our water scarcity. Okay, and what can we do about it? If we have a problem, usually the next question that we may ask is, what can we do about the problem? Well, it depends on the location. If you look at Israel and other Middle East countries, they basically built this industrial process through which the salt water is converted to fresh water. And it's really great because if it's converted to fresh water, we can drink it and we can use it. But the downside is that it requires a lot of money. And does every single country in this world have a lot of money? No. So if we're some less developed and poor countries, what do we do? If we are like African countries that are poor relatively, what can we do? Well, unfortunately, there's nothing much that we can do. But there's something that everyone can do to save water, and we can do that by limiting our water usage directly. And here's just a fun fact that toilet is the largest contributor to the daily water usage for an ordinary family. But we can, limit our shower time to, save more water. And if everyone does that, that's going to be really helpful, and that's going to save us a considerable amount of water. Okay. And what are some other issues? Well, another notable issue is the poor sanitation. If we only have fresh water but it's not clean, if there's a lot of bacteria and a lot of harmful substances in the water, it's still not usable. It's not drinkable, and a lot of water is unsafe to drink, especially in some less developed countries and countries that have less access to sanitation. They're not safe to drink. Their water is not safe to drink. And if we drink it, if people in those countries drink it, they're probably going to develop some horrible illnesses and even death. Then what can we do about it? Well, if you first look at this background picture, this is basically the Ganges River in India after the COVID-19 lockdown, and how, like, if you look at this, it's a totally different river from the picture before. And the title is called "How Lockdown Has Been a Gift for Ganga." But we cannot always rely on a global pandemic to change the quality of the water, because that's first of all, that's too costly, and second is not controllable. And what can we do is that we can set up different government policies and regulations. We can, save our water quality and provide better access to sanitation through government legislations. If government is taking actions, there's going to be a huge amount of improvement. And what else can we do is that we can, provide more education, more sanitation on an individual level, and that is going to help a lot if it's done in a great scale. Okay, so that's about it. That's everything that we're going to talk about in this video about water. So hopefully why is it important, why is water important, and how it's cycled in on the earth. And you probably hopefully you have learned two important issues regarding water. And I hope this video is helpful.